You want to know the funny thing about being house poor? You don't even need a house to be house poor. Imagine living in an apartment and being house poor. That's worse. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, hello, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about house poverty. It's an actual term and it has very little to do with your income and the size of your house, the cost of your house. You can live in a $100,000 house, if you can find one today, and still be house poor. You can make $200,000 and still be house poor. So let's get to the definition and how to know if you're house poor, what to do about it too. But before we do, remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. Let's get straight into it. Are you house poor? So what is the definition of house poor? Let's find out. So house poor refers to a situation where a significant portion of a person's income goes towards house-related costs or expenses, leaving them with limited funds for other essential expenses or discretionary spending. And typically you're considered house poor if more than 50% of your income, your take-home pay, goes towards your housing. But there's a caveat to that. Let's say you're doing really large pre-tax deductions such as maxing out your 401k, maxing out your HSA, all these other accounts that you're maxing out, that 50% goes towards your housing. Then you're not technically house poor, because even though 50% or more could go towards housing, you probably have a larger income than the others. You're already doing pre-tax savings, so it's not like you're being limited in funds. If you ever needed more funds, you just reduce your savings, and then it will no longer be 50% of your take-home pay. But this will refer to without any savings. If more than 50% is going towards your housing expenses alone, not including other expenses, you are house poor. But some financial experts will even say that any more than 30 to 40%, you're getting into the house poor sector. And this will include money that you're paying for either rent or mortgage, utilities, Wi-Fi, property taxes, insurance. So typically you want to make sure that it's no more than 25% of your take-home pay if you're in saving. But if you're saving and doing large amounts of pre-tax savings, probably 30-40% will be the sweeter spot, and you don't want to exceed that. So another way to know if you're house poor is your housing is costing so much money or struggling to meet other expenses or other needs, such as your health insurance, car insurance, maybe even food and other essentials to live. Now, this will not include vacations. We're not going to include you wanting a bigger car. I mean, hopefully you have an emergency fund. Hopefully you'll be able to have some for other living expenses that are discretionary. But those are not as important because they are wants, not needs. But if you are getting to the point where you're struggling because your housing is such a big portion of it, you certainly are house poor. The next thing goes into limited savings. So first, I did talk about your pre-tax savings. So if you're already maxed out your 401k, HSA, and then your housing is just a little bit more, then you're not house poor because you're already maxing out such a big portion of your savings. So if you don't have to max out, if you're putting good, significant contribution, that's great. If especially over 30% of your income, gross or take home, is going towards savings, then you're already doing good. Then you won't be considered house poor. If you're unable to save because your housing costs so much of your income, then you are house poor. So if you're unable to save for retirement, if you're unable to save for an emergency fund, other short-term savings, maybe save for a house down payments because you're currently renting. And that's the funny thing about being house poor. You don't even need a house to be house poor. It's like you can be in an apartment and still be house poor. How sad is that? So you want to make sure that your housing cost is not infringing on your savings. Now, you really know you're house poor if you're relying on debt to cover your other expenses, such as most commonly credit cards. So if you're unable to pay off your credit card in full every single month because you're relying on using your credit card to cover other essential expenses, then you're house poor. Now remember, essential is relative. Getting your hair done is not essential. Getting manicures and pedicures, other self-care things are not essential. Like we're talking about food, maybe even utilities or other insurances that are necessary in order to survive, or maybe drive a car. Not the car payment, that's not a necessity because you can always get a cheaper car if that's a car you can't afford. But let's say you needed insurance and you can't pay that insurance out of pocket because your housing cost is eating so much into your income, then you are house poor. It is not a good idea to carry credit card debt or even a balance from month to month. Always pay it off in full, but certainly don't get to a point where you're covering necessities with your credit card. Don't overspend on wants. That would not be house poor, that's just being irresponsible. The next one is if you're having difficulties covering expenses or emergencies for your house, maintenance, repairs, then you're certainly house poor. The idea is that when you buy a house, you'll be able to afford even from like 2 to 5% of the house value for yearly maintenance. So if you're spending so much money on a house, and I'm talking about a house rather than say an apartment, because in apartments you're not responsible for any repairs. But if you actually own a house and you're letting go of things that need to be fixed because you just don't have the money and space in your budget to fix it, you're literally maxed out, not because you're spending irresponsibly on wants, but rather because so much of your money is going towards the house, then you are house poor. You don't want to not do repairs and have things rot, go bad, and invest. Let's say a mold and you have money to get that cleaned up, that can really spread across. Or let's say the roof is bad, and so fixing it, now you're waiting for much later and stretching it, and the roof caves in. You want to make sure you have enough money for any repairs that will be needed. And that's why before you get into a house, it is always advised that you have an emergency fund just in case, because things will break and things will need to be fixed. And unlike renting an apartment, it will be on you. And even though I did say wants are not as important, it's always good to also leave a little room in your budget for enjoyment. And somehow if you can find none, this is meaning that you can't somehow budget for fun with your income. If you don't use credit card, then you are house poor. It's important that we enjoy life. Life is short. I know your little FOMO, I always talk about it. You don't want to overly indulge in wants, but it's still good to enjoy life. It's still good to have fun, to go on vacation. And I certainly go on vacation. And I'm already planning vacation for 2024. I'm excited to go on vacation. If you have zero room for it, or very little room in your budget for enjoyments, then you're possibly house poor. And you would certainly know you're house poor if your housing cost causes you financial distress, you're anxious about it, you're uncomfortable about the cost of your housing, especially if it's a mortgage, because most people take out 15 or 30-year mortgages, with 30-year mortgages being the most common. And while hopefully your income will increase over the next 30 years, you're still gonna feel that financial pinch for a long time, and you don't even know how to predict the increase of your income. So while your housing is still a big portion of your income, you're going to feel financially stressed, and it's going to affect so many different aspects of your life. Your cost of housing, rent or mortgage, should not be so substantial that you can't cover it on your own, or it causes you financial distress just by thinking about it or talking about it. It is important that it's something that we can comfortably afford. And you will certainly know your house poor if you have no room in your budget to cover other unexpected events. Now that's why you have an emergency fund. But still, sometimes things happen. The emergency fund is used, you need to replenish it. And if your budget is so tight and your house is taking up so much, you can't continue to put money into your emergency fund or come up with some money quickly in case your emergency fund is not enough, then you should know that you're house poor. Your money is being eaten up by your rent or mortgage payments. And that's why I stress the importance of it not being income-based or the cost of the house. It just depends on which situation you're in. If you buy a $300,000 house and you have a $50,000 income, you're gonna feel that financial pinch because that mortgage, 30-year fixed, is still gonna be a significant part of your income. Just as if somebody made $200,000 and they bought $1 million house on a 30-year fixed mortgage, is gonna be a significant portion of their income. It's a combination of how much you make and how much the house costs. They're not independent of each other. The next one is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something to consider, that if you need part-time job or you need to work significantly more hours to cover the cost of your housing, then you might be house poor. Now, I always encourage people to have side hustles, make more income, to strive for better jobs and better opportunities in the future. But with that being said, that should not be to cover your primary residence, but rather as an addition to a hopefully more financially successful future. Maybe you want to max out your 401k, you want to contribute more towards a future goal. Those should be the reasons why you work overtime or have a side hustle or a part-time job. If you already have a full-time job, hopefully your housing payments comfortably fits. Now I know that's not for everybody since housing has gone up significantly over the past 3 years, but even then, let us strive for housing situations that comfortably fit into our regular income. And the last but absolutely not the least is you think and you know that you would be more comfortable if you downsized, moved out, changed apartments, sold the house, got rid of it, and got into something more affordable. Then I should tell you all you need to know, that you probably are spending way too much money on your housing, apartments, or an actual house. So when you recognize this on your own, then it is up to you to make those changes and to take the steps necessary to put yourself in a more financially comfortable situation. Don't feel stressed and overburdened with the cost of housing. And I know it's already expensive. In Dallas, the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment is over $1,500, and that's a lot of money. I know a lot of people may not be able to comfortably afford it, but even before I moved into this apartment, I lived in a much cheaper apartment until I could afford more. So there's always options such as getting a roommate, such as just renting a room. I know those are not glamorous options, but you definitely have to consider what your future goals are as well. I know I don't want to rent forever, so my goal now is not to spend all or majority of my money on my rent, but instead to find something that's comfortable, and I'll be saving for down payments on a house in the future. So with that, bringing this video to an end, thank you all so much. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. And if you enjoyed this video, watch another one. I have so many videos on my channel that deals with personal finance, self-care, and I'm sure you'll be able to find something that you enjoy. And let me know in the comment section, are you house poor? Have you ever been house poor? And what are your thoughts on being house poor? I look forward to reading your comments. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.